The Vanishing Road. The Gathering. Chapter 1. The Diner at Mile Marker 0. The sign was barely visible through the fog, its paint flaking off the cracked wood. Route 19, Treston Pass. Megan Reed peered at it through her windshield, the wipers groaning as they swept away the mist clinging to her glass. Treston Pass, she murmured to herself. Here we are again. A year ago, she swore she'd never return. The road had swallowed her best friend whole that night, leaving Megan stranded on the shoulder with nothing but her broken ankle and an empty car. Police said Anna must have wandered into the woods, lost. Megan knew better. Anna hadn't just walked away, she'd been taken. The headlights caught a faint glow ahead. A diner stood alone at the edge of the fog, its neon sign buzzing weakly. Open. Inside, the place reeked of stale coffee and burned bacon. The light overhead flickered, buzzing like a dying wasp. A waitress, early 60s, with tired eyes and a cigarette tucked behind her ear, wiped down the counter. Megan slid into a booth by the window, the fog pressing against the glass like it wanted in. "Coffee?" the waitress asked. "Sure." As the waitress poured, the bell above the door jingled. Megan turned her head to see a man walk in, carrying a leather bag and looking around like he expected the place to be empty. He wore a threadbare brown coat over a black turtleneck, just enough to scream, "I'm here to solve the unsolvable." "Another investigator," Megan muttered under her breath. The man spotted her, hesitated, and walked over. "You're here about the road, aren't you?" Megan didn't answer right away. "And you are." "Daniel Holt." He held out a hand. Megan shook it reluctantly. "Paranormal investigator." "Here we go." Before Megan could respond, the bell rang again. Two more figures entered. One was an older man, broad-shouldered, with gray stubble and a sheriff's badge on his chest, Officer Rick Tanner. The other was a tall woman with a calm expression and strange glassy eyes. Megan felt her gaze linger a little too long. "Quite the crowd," Daniel muttered, looking unnerved. The sheriff made himself at home at the counter. "Coffee, Marcy," he grumbled to the waitress, ignoring everyone else. The woman followed him silently and sat beside him. Daniel leaned closer to Megan. "Do you see that woman?" "Yes." "So what?" "She's Lena Vasquez." Megan frowned. The name tickled something at the back of her mind. An old news story or podcast, something about a medium who could commune with restless spirits. "Wonderful," Megan said dryly. "A psychic. Now we're complete." Daniel's smirk was humorless. "You'll want her when things go sideways. Trust me." The last person to enter was younger, a college-aged kid with wild, anxious eyes and a backpack slung over one shoulder. He hesitated near the door before walking up to the sheriff. "Are you Officer Tanner?" The sheriff grunted. The kid swallowed hard. "I'm Lucas Chen. My girlfriend, Kara, she went missing on this road a week ago." Chapter 2. Into the Fog. An hour later, they gathered in the diner's parking lot. The fog had thickened to the point where Megan could barely see her own car. The diner's sign buzzed behind them, its dim glow barely holding the darkness at bay. "We head in together," Tanner said, his voice gravelly. "Nobody wanders off alone. This place has a way of playing tricks on people." "Tricks?" Lucas asked, voice shaking. Tanner shot him a look. "You'll see." The road swallowed them whole as they drove in a caravan, headlights illuminating nothing but gray mist and skeletal trees. Megan kept focus on the road, though her thoughts clawed at her. Anna would still be here if I hadn't stopped to take that call. Her car radio was hissed with static. She frowned and reached to turn it off. "Megan." The voice was faint, but it cut through the static like glass through flesh. She slammed the knob, silencing it. Her heart hammered in her chest. She glanced in the rearview mirror, expecting to see something, someone sitting in the back seat. Nothing. Just the fog. Chapter 3. A Road Without End. The silence inside Megan's car was suffocating. Behind her, the headlights of Tanner's cruiser and Lucas's beat-up sedan floated like ghostly orbs, swallowed by the fog as if they were driving through a void. The road stretched endlessly, a ribbon of cracked asphalt winding through skeletal trees that seemed to lean closer with every mile. Megan's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "This place isn't right," she thought. Her radio had been silent since that voice, Anna's voice, hissed through the static. Up ahead, Daniel's old station wagon suddenly jerked to the side of the road and stopped. Megan's headlights flared on his bumper as she hit the brakes. "What the hell?" she muttered. Tanner's cruiser pulled up behind her, red and blue lights flashing faintly through the mist. Megan opened her door and stepped out, the air colder than she remembered. Daniel stood by his car, staring into the woods. "Did you see that?" he asked when Megan approached. "See what?" Daniel pointed. "Someone's out there. A figure. Just for a second." Tanner stomped over, his boots crunching gravel. "What's going on?" "Someone's in the trees," Daniel said. Tanner's face hardened. "Stay here." He turned and disappeared into the fog with his flashlight, the beam barely cutting through the gloom. Megan looked at Daniel. "Are you sure you saw someone?" Daniel didn't look at her. "I've been doing this long enough to know what I saw. Someone was there." Behind them, Lena Vasquez stood by Tanner's cruiser, her gaze fixed on the tree line. Megan watched her carefully. "What do you see?" Lena didn't look away. "They're watching us." "Who?" Lena blinked, her voice calm. "The ones who never made it off this road." Chapter 4. Whispers in the dark. 15 minutes later, Tanner re-emerged, shaking his head. "There's no one out there." Daniel didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. They resumed driving, though Megan felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on her. Something was wrong with this place, and it was growing harder to ignore. An hour later, the road still hadn't changed. Megan's odometer read 50 miles, yet the route was identical, twisting, featureless. Worse, there was no sign of the diner or anything else behind them. "We're going in circles." Lucas's voice crackled over the walkie-talkie Tanner had handed everyone earlier. Tanner's voice came through next. "Keep moving. We'll stop at the next turnout." "There is no next turnout," Megan muttered to herself. Then, as if in answer, the fog parted. A rusted old road sign emerged, leaning drunkenly at the edge of the shoulder. The words were barely legible under layers of grime. Route 19, mile marker 0. Megan slammed on the brakes. No way. The others pulled up behind her one by one, headlights cutting long shadows across the mist. Tanner was the first to approach, his expression grim. "It's the same sign," Megan said, gesturing to it. Lucas stepped out of his car, his face pale. "That's impossible. We've been driving for hours." Lena moved closer to the sign and laid her hand on its surface. "Time doesn't move right here. Neither do we." Daniel's expression hardened. "This road isn't natural." Tanner ran a hand over his face, his calm beginning to fray. "Look, we need to turn around." "We tried that," Megan said. "We'll just end up here again." "Then we walk," Daniel said. Everyone turned to him. "We leave the cars and head through the woods," he continued. "The road wants us to stay on it, so we get off." Tanner shook his head. "You don't know what's out there." Daniel locked eyes with him. "I know what's here, Sheriff, and it's not going to let us leave." Chapter 5. The Forest's Hunger. The forest was darker than the road. The moment they stepped off the asphalt, the fog seemed to thicken, clinging to their skin like cold breath. Lucas stayed close to Lena, his flashlight beam trembling as he swept it over the gnarled branches. "You ever feel like you're being watched?" Lena turned to him, her voice soft. "We are." The group fell silent. Only the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional snap of a branch broke the stillness. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the trees. "Lucas." The sound froze them in place. Lucas turned toward the woods, his flashlight darting wildly. That was Kara. "Don't!" Tanner barked, but Lucas was already moving. "Kara!" Lucas called, his voice cracking. He disappeared into the fog before anyone could stop him. "Lucas!" Megan shouted. A scream ripped through the trees, raw and inhuman. Chapter 6. The First Loss. The scream hung in the air, piercing and raw. Then silence. "Lucas!" Tanner growled, breaking into a jog, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly in the fog. Megan and Daniel followed close behind, hearts pounding, while Lena trailed silently, her expression unreadable. "Lucas!" Megan shouted. Her voice was swallowed by the trees. She stopped suddenly. "Wait, listen." The forest fell unnaturally still. Then, faintly, a voice echoed back. "Help me." It was Lucas, or something that sounded like him. "Stay together," Tanner barked. "Don't split up." They pushed deeper into the woods, the fog growing so dense it was like wading through water. The beam from Megan's flashlight trembled as she swept it side to side. She thought she saw shadows flitting between the trees, tall, wrong-shaped shadows. The voice came again. "I'm here." Tanner stopped. "Lucas?" The beam of his flashlight caught something ahead, a figure standing perfectly still among the trees. "Lucas!" Megan ran forward before Tanner could stop her. She froze. Lucas was standing there, but something was off. He faced away from them, his arms hanging limply at his sides. "Lucas." Megan's voice wavered. She edged closer, her flashlight shaking. "Are you okay?" Slowly, Lucas turned. His face was pale, his eyes glassy. "I found her," he whispered. "Found who?" Megan asked. Lucas's face was contorted into something between a smile and a grimace. "She's waiting for you, Megan." Megan's blood ran cold. "What?" Suddenly, Lucas's body jerked unnaturally, as though pulled by invisible strings. He convulsed, dropping to his knees. From deep within him came a guttural, inhuman sound. "Back up," Tanner yelled, grabbing Megan's arm and pulling her away. Lucas's head snapped up, his mouth stretched wide in a scream that echoed through the trees. The sound was not human. It was something older, darker. Then his body went limp. He collapsed face down on the forest floor, unmoving. "Jesus Christ," Daniel whispered. Megan felt her chest tighten. She knelt beside Lucas, her flashlight shaking as she turned him over. His eyes were wide open, staring blankly. "He's gone," Lena said softly, standing over them. Tanner crouched down, his expression hard as stone. "We need to get out of these woods. Now." Chapter 7. The road takes its toll. They stumbled back toward the road in silence, the fog pressing against them like a living thing. Lucas's loss hung over them like a curse, and the forest seemed hungry, as if waiting for its next victim. "What happened to him?" Megan asked finally. Her voice was hoarse. Lena walked beside her, calm as ever. "The road broke him." Daniel looked back. "What does that mean?" Lena's eyes seemed to cloud over. "The road shows you what you fear most. It reaches into your soul, into the guilt and pain you hide from everyone else. If you can't resist it," she gestured vaguely, "it takes you." They reached the road again, emerging from the woods like drowning victims gasping for air. Tanner leaned against his cruiser, breathing heavily. "We stick together from now on, no exceptions." Megan turned to Lena. "You said the road feeds on fear. Why us? Why did it choose us?" Lena tilted her head, her voice quiet. "We chose it. We're here because we're all hiding something we don't want to face." Megan flinched. "Anna." "That night, she vanished." Daniel looked at Tanner. "What about you, Sheriff? Why are you here?" Tanner's face darkened. "I've been chasing this damn road my whole life. My brother disappeared here when I was 10. We were playing near the woods, and he just walked into the fog and never came out." Lena nodded, as though she already knew. "And you never forgave yourself." The group fell silent, the weight of unspoken guilt pressing on them all. Suddenly, Megan's car radio crackled to life, though no one was inside. "Megan." The voice was unmistakable. It was Anna. Chapter 8. Anna's voice. Megan froze, her heart pounding. "Megan, help me." Without thinking, she ran to her car and leaned inside, the radio still hissing with static. "Anna." The voice wavered, fainted, and distorted. "You left me. You let me die." Megan's hands trembled. "No, I didn't. I tried to save you." "Come find me, Megan." The static cut off abruptly. "Megan, step back!" Tanner's voice barked behind her. She turned, tears in her eyes. "She's alive. Anna's alive." "Megan." Daniel's voice was soft. "It's lying to you." "No!" Megan shouted, her voice cracking. "It's her. I heard her." Tanner stepped forward. "Megan, listen to me. Whatever this place is, it knows how to get to us. It's using her against you." Megan shook her head. "I can't leave her. Not again." Before anyone could stop her, Megan bolted toward the woods. Chapter 9. The Truth Revealed. Megan ran deeper into the fog, the others' shouts echoing faintly behind her. Anna's voice called to her, clearer now, guiding her deeper into the trees. "You left me, Megan. You have to save me." Megan stumbled to a halt in a small clearing. Her flashlight flickered, its beam catching something up ahead. An old, crumpled car, half buried in the underbrush. Her heart stopped. It was Anna's car. Slowly, Megan approached. The driver's side door hung open, rusted and broken. Inside, she saw a figure slumping over the wheel. Anna, her face pale, her empty eyes staring. "No," Megan whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't leave you." The figure stirred. Anna's head turned slowly, unnaturally. "You did," the voice said, deeper now. "You left me, Megan." The figure's mouth stretched into a grotesque grin as it lunged toward her. Chapter 10. The Buried Truth. Megan stumbled backward, her scream choking in her throat as the thing that looked like Anna crawled out of the wreckage. Its limbs moved wrong, joints bending at sickening angles, its mouth grinning impossibly wide. "You left me, Megan," the voice taunted, deeper now, vibrating in the fog. "And now you'll join me." Megan turned and ran, her flashlight slipping from her hand. The beam vanished into the mist as she sprinted blindly through the trees, branches scratching her face and arms. Behind her, she heard it following. The crunch of leaves, the guttural scraping of something not human. "This isn't real," she told herself, but the words sounded hollow. Up ahead, she saw a flicker of light, Daniel's flashlight. "Megan," his voice called. She burst into the clearing and collapsed, gasping for air. Daniel and Tanner ran toward her, weapons drawn. "What happened?" Tanner demanded. "It was her," Megan sobbed. "Anna, she's here. She's in the car and she's not human." Tanner's face darkened. "It's the road. It's feeding off you." Lena stepped forward, kneeling beside Megan. "It's not your friend, Megan. It's the part of you that's broken. The guilt, the pain. This place, it twists it, makes it real." Megan stared at her. "Then why did it pick me? Why not someone else?" Lena's expression softened. "Because you're strong enough to fight it." Before Megan could respond, a scream split the air. Daniel's. Chapter 11. Daniel's Burden. They turned to see Daniel standing frozen, his flashlight aimed into the fog. His face was pale, his body trembling. "What is it?" Tanner barked, stepping toward him. Daniel's voice shook. "It's my sister." "What?" Daniel's hand trembled as he pointed. "She died when I was 12, drowned in the lake behind our house. I was supposed to watch her. I looked away for 1 minute, one damn minute, and..." He trailed off, his flashlight beam revealing a small figure standing just inside the tree line. It was a girl, maybe 8 years old, her hair dripping wet, her dress clinging to her frame. Danny. The girl's voice was soft, innocent. "Why did you leave me?" Daniel's face crumpled. "Number, I didn't. I tried to save you." "Daniel, don't listen to it," Lena shouted, but it was too late. The girl stepped forward, and as she did, her skin darkened, her features twisting into something monstrous. Black eyes, a mouth too wide. "Why did you let me die?" it growled. Daniel dropped to his knees, clutching his head. The fog swirled around him, thick and dark, and when it cleared, he was gone. Chapter 12. Confronting the Road. "It's picking us off," Tanner growled, his voice tight with anger and fear. "We're playing right into its hands." Megan wiped tears from her face, her resolve hardening. "Then how do we stop it?" Lena turned to her, her eyes dark and distant. "We have to confront it, face the truth it's showing us, or it will take us one by one." Tanner gripped his gun. "And if that doesn't work?" "Then we die here," Lena said simply. They returned to the road, its cracked asphalt stretching into infinity. The fog thickened as they walked, pressing against them like wet wool. The voices returned, whispers drifting in the air. "Megan, you left me. Rick, it's your fault. Lena, they're waiting for you." Suddenly the road ended. The fog parted to reveal a massive chasm, the earth splitting open into darkness. Shapes writhed below, shadowy and monstrous, their cries echoing up from the void. Lena stepped forward, her voice steady. "This is the heart of it. The road isn't a place, it's a being. It feeds on us, on guilt, regret, and fear. It wants us to give in." Megan stared into the darkness, her fists clenched. "Then we don't." Chapter 13. The Final Stand. The fog coiled around them, and from the void came the voices, Anna's, Daniel's sister, Tanner's brother. Figures emerged, twisted versions of those they had lost, crawling out of the chasm, their eyes black and soulless. Tanner raised his gun, but Lena grabbed his arm. "It won't work. This is a battle of will, not weapons." Megan stepped forward, facing the figure that wore Anna's face. "You're not real," she said firmly. The figure tilted its head, its smile widening. "I am the part of you that knows you let her die." Megan's heart pounded, but she forced herself to look into those empty eyes. "I didn't let her die. I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean I killed her. It wasn't my fault." The figure flinched, its form flickering. Tanner stepped forward next, facing the shadowy version of his brother. "I was a kid. I couldn't save you. But I didn't kill you. The figure snarled, its face cracking like porcelain. The road began to tremble. The fog screamed, a sound that shook the air and rattled their bones. The chasm began to collapse, the void shrinking, pulling the twisted figures down with it. "Keep going!" Lena shouted. Megan looked at Anna one last time. "You're not real. You can't have me." The figure screamed as it disintegrated into shadow. The road cracked and split, the fog dissipating as light broke through for the first time. Epilogue. Mile marker 0. Megan opened her eyes to sunlight streaming through the trees. She was lying on the edge of Route 19, the others beside her. Tanner sat up first, his face pale but alive. Lena stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "What happened?" Megan asked. Lena looked at her with a faint smile. "We survived." Megan glanced around. The road looked normal now, just an empty stretch of asphalt leading nowhere. Tanner sighed. "No one will believe this." Megan looked down the road one last time. "It doesn't matter. We made it out." As they walked back to the diner, Megan felt the weight of the road lift from her shoulders. The guilt, the shame, it was still there, but it no longer controlled her. Behind them, at mile marker 0, the fog swirled faintly before disappearing into nothing. The end.
I hope you enjoyed the story. Like and subscribe for more. Thank you for wandering the foggy paths of Mistmore with us. Stay curious, but beware what you may uncover in the mist. Farewell, brave souls, from Mistmore Mysteries.